Hi, Lou here to talk about another nuts and bolts topic, how little things can make a big difference in a design. What do I mean by little? I mean there are occasionally situations where you may have just a few design choices or just a few that you thought of, but which one you pick makes a big difference. Often you may not even be aware of all the possible choices, and they can, in certain situations, make or break a game. So the purpose of this screencast is to highlight that and to talk about some of the choices. Now, I'm not wanting to belabor the obvious here, and some of you who are experienced might think, well, of course that's true, but I find that many inexperienced designers don't know all of the of courses. So I'm going to give some examples. First, I'm going to talk about dice. Obviously, some people really dislike the use of dice, and some like it. Use of dice fits more with the command or dynamic style of play than with the corporate manager or incremental style of play. Dice are associated with cheers and groans in a way that cards are not, in a way that management styles of gaming are not. Keep in mind also, many people are happy to play games using dice because they can use the dice as an excuse for losing, even if they weren't actually unlucky. In other words, your ego is less on the line when dice are involved. It's easy to blame the dice. People blame the dice even when they don't believe it themselves. But it works. Now, there are also many people who at least appear to be convinced that they are unlucky or lucky with dice, and that is ridiculous. The laws of probability prevail in the long run, barring loaded dice. It's ridiculous, but a lot of people believe it. Nonetheless, a lot depends on when the dice are rolled and whether just one or two players are affected or whether all the players are affected when there's more than two players. The unlucky ones, quote unquote, are going to be less unhappy when everyone is affected by a roll. And of course, the anti-dice types will also be happier that way. They'll be less happy when only one or two people are affected by the roll. So keep that in mind when you're deciding how to use dice in the game, and you will make better choices. A digression. If you're going to use dice or other chance mechanisms, avoid ways where an individual can rely on a particular chance mechanism to greatly improve his or her situation. Because if it works, the other players may not like it. And if it doesn't work, the player who chose to do it may blame the game, even if the odds were heavily against him. Keep in mind that lots of people cannot calculate even simple odds, and probably lots more just don't bother to try. Now we can talk about victory point scoring. This primarily applies to high reactivity games, games where players can strongly affect one another, which is usually war games or something close to war games. Consider several possibilities for victory point scoring and when the points get scored. First, scoring can occur at the end of the player's turn. This encourages the player to attack to get those few extra points by the end of his turn, and conversely discourages defending. Second, you can have scoring occur at the beginning of the player's turn instead of the end. This encourages strong defenses rather than adventurism. It's the opposite of the first choice. Third, consider scoring at the end of an entire turn. That is, all the players play, then all the players score. And I'm thinking in particular of games for more than two in this situation. Even more than the previous choice, this encourages defense from players playing early in the round. Now those playing late in the round can still be adventuresome, or adventurous if you prefer. Fourth, consider scoring at the end of an entire turn, but only every third turn, as in Britannia. This introduces phasing, as players are less likely to be aggressive in non-scoring turns than in scoring turns. And it encourages more defense and less attack. And all we've done in these four choices is change when the scoring occurs. This is what I'm talking about when I say little things can make a big difference. Now let's consider negotiation. First, it's impossible to remove all negotiation from a game unless you can isolate each player the way tournament bridge players are now isolated by barriers so they can't even see their partner. They can't see anybody. Even if the rules of a game say no negotiation, a player can look meaningfully at a location, he can point to another player with a certain expression on his or her face, and so forth. He can use body language, in other words. All of that are forms of simple negotiation. At the other extreme from isolating each player is the negotiation in the game diplomacy, a 15-minute secret negotiation session before every turn. When a diplomacy turn starts, players start to go away from the board where they can talk privately with other players, come back, grab somebody else, take them off, talk with them privately, and so forth. No wonder it takes 15 minutes. So what's the effect? Well, negotiation is going to lengthen any game, and secret negotiation will make it last much longer. On the other hand, negotiation of any kind is part of the psychological side of games and often suits those who think, quote, games are about people, unquote, rather than those who think, quote, games are about math, unquote, or even, quote, all games are math, unquote. Some people who don't understand the entire idea of diplomacy think negotiation amounts to a popularity contest. Those people generally are really bad at negotiation, so it's not surprising they think this. No, negotiation is a matter of reasoning and persuasion. Now, in Britannia, when I was working on the second edition of a game that's already a 4 to 5 hour game, players asked me to ban negotiation. But as I said, this is not possible. You can't ban it entirely. Instead, I explicitly stated that negotiation was only allowed over the table, where any player could hear it, which significantly limits what can go on. Now, the game could be played with secret negotiation, and I'm sure some people do play it that way somewhere, but it makes for a much longer game. Now, secret negotiation adds a lot to a game. The problem is, how much time does it add to the game? Well, here's a method for adding some secret negotiation into the game without making it take too long. Give each player a certain number of tokens, like 3 or 2, something like that. During the game, they can use or expend one of those tokens and have a conversation in secret with another player of their choice or players of some limited duration. You could even include a sand timer for that. When the player runs out of tokens, they have no more option to do secret negotiation unless somebody else expends their token to talk to them. Of course, you can always provide a way to gain more of these tokens, but that may lengthen the game. It also makes for an interesting choice because presumably, if you're providing a way to gain more tokens, the players are sacrificing something else that would contribute toward winning the game. So, in summary, keep an open mind to other ways of doing things where a small change might make a big difference. Thanks for listening.